Okay, hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a really cool JDM Seiko model for you from the Presage line. Before we jump into the review, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Seiko as a brand. They were founded back in 1881. Of course, they are Japanese in origin. Now they have factories throughout Asia. Basically, they're one of the few brands that are out there that actually cover all market segments from entry level to very, very high end. So Seiko definitely has a great past, great history, lots of horological milestones, so they're well respected. Definitely within the watch community. It's kind of funny, Seiko's one of those brands where if you know nothing about watches, you probably think Seikos are pretty nice. Just because they're the more expensive department store brands that are out there, and they actually do have a fair amount of marketing, so you do see the commercials and everything. And then once you start learning a little bit more about watches, you kind of think of Seiko's as being kind of this cheaper brand. You think of it as very entry level and affordable, and then you learn more about the brand the more you get into watches, and you find out kind of about their history more. Then you start finding out about some of their higher end models and lines, and you start realizing, wow, they're actually really impressive, even from a horological standpoint. So I think that's one of the funny things about Seiko, is that depending on your knowledge and kind of where you are in your watch journey, you'll have a varying amount as far of as much as you're going to appreciate this brand. And I think they're definitely a great brand that they have a place in really any collector's collection. So let's go ahead and cover the type of watch this is. I would say this would really fall into that pilot's watch category, and as far as key features and design language from a pilot's watch, you really want that balance of legibility and functionality, and I think that's something that this particular piece really has in spades. So let's go ahead and zoom out and get this guy in hand here. So one thing I will mention is this is not the OEM strap. This is actually a brand new strap from a brand new company, strap company out there called Haveston. And definitely keep an eye out for the full review. But I mean, I like this strap so much, it's really been hard for me to take it off. I mean, it's just, I think it really suits this aesthetic really well. It just has that nice military look, and the color palette, the build quality, just everything, just absolutely top notch. So definitely keep an eye out for the full review for the straps. I actually do plan on kind of doing a quality strap kind of face off in the future, so you'll see a couple of different more high-end straps kind of battling it out. But until then, definitely enjoy the video with this particular one. Now, I do like this strap very much, but I do have to mention that this watch actually came on probably the best factory Seiko strap that I've ever received. It's not only not cardboardy, it has actually nicely padded, and then it has kind of a suede underneath, very comfortable. The nice signed buckle there. Really, I gotta say, I was really impressed by this band, and if it wasn't for this strap here, I'd probably still be wearing it on this really great factory leather strap, which is a huge surprise from Seiko. I mean, really, very few brands are going to produce a nice leather band from the factory. So to see that from a Seiko, it just makes you realize how many tricks that they still have up their sleeve, especially in their JDM or Japanese domestic market models. So let's go ahead and get to some of the details here. Now, this is the JDM Seiko Presage SRPB07, and basically this guy here is one of their newer releases, and there's not much info out online, and a lot of it is actually contradictory depending on if you go to the Seiko UK website or the Seiko Canada website. So the specs that you saw flash across the screen earlier, I'm just going to confirm for you, I did bust out the calipers myself and measure. This is a 41 millimeter diameter with an 11 millimeter height, and it definitely is a very nice. Of course, I think everybody generally either they're more of a 38, a 40, or a 42 kind of watch wear, and I think 42 is very common for a pilot's watch. 40 is nice, especially like if you have it on bracelet, and then 38 is definitely always going to be classic styling. But for a pilot's watch, I think this is the right size and the right scale. So I think really they hit it out of the park with this one, especially with the 20 millimeter lug width. Now, let's not jump too far ahead. Let's cover the crystal, which is a sapphire, and it's flat, as you can see. Really nicely done. Of course, that's one of the things you can expect from Seiko's Presage line, and their JDM models in general is they're gonna have some of those nicer features you don't catch on your kind of average run-of-the-mill Seikos. So it's nice to have a sapphire crystal here. The bezel is a nice fixed bezel that's brushed on top, but then underneath has this really high polish, which I think ties in really well to the case, which of course also has the sides polished. And then on these lugs here, you can see very nice transition to the brushing that's there, which is very finely done. That beautiful kettle shape case, which is not too common when it comes to Seiko. Normally it's kind of the opposite. It'll kind of thin out, narrow out towards the back of the case. Here you see it has a nice bulge, kind of reminiscent of my Oris Aquis and that nice kettle shape, which I think is really good, and it just adds some extra dimension. And because this is so highly polished, you'll see that a lot of the side of the case really just disappears on your wrist, which helps this watch just wear really quite perfectly. Now, the crown is a non-screw down crown. It is not signed either, so very standard affair from that perspective. But I think, with the theme, it's definitely fine. It's, it would have been nice to have a signed crown, but really, at the price that this comes in at. Now the MSRP, let's go ahead, I think I actually jumped past that, is for about 460 bucks. But on the street, this is about a $210 watch. So I think that's just really fantastic value when you consider what you have, tacking in hand windable movement, sapphire crystal display case back. Of course you can't see it because I have it on, this nice NATO, but we'll get to that later on in the review. So, getting back to kind of where I was, non-screw down crown. Now the movement is, an automatic Seiko 4R35 movement. The 35 basically means just the date. 36 would be day date, and it is located. The complication there for the date window is right about that 4.5 spacing, which is nice because especially since they have the black date disc with the white lettering, it really ties in well and is not obtrusive whatsoever on this dial. So I think it just has really great balance and symmetry to it, and it really just sings when you look at it. So the dial is a matte black dial, and it has raised indices that are painted. So I don't know if the camera can pick this up, but basically this is not a flat dial with just some things printed on it. It actually, these are actually raised. I'm sure they were just cut that way and then painted and finished. As you can see, even the Seiko logo there, the letters are also raised as well. So really, really nicely done from that perspective. It has painted hands, as you can see, and then it uses Seiko's Lumabrite on the hands and those outer track pips there. The numbers actually are not loomed, which would have been pretty nice. And I think that definitely would probably suit more of a field watch, but as kind of a pilot's watch, I don't think it's quite as necessary to be super strong as far as loom goes. And really, by not having these painted with lume and actually having white paint, it really keeps the purity of the dial and kind of the balance of it being white versus, you know, kind of being an off-white or, you know, tinted green hued color. So I think that's one of the nice things as far as, you know, in the daylight, it really assists with legibility because it has a consistency in the white versus if it was loomed, you know, sometimes it would have more of a tint of different types of colors in there, you know, whether it be green or almost like a yellowish tinge. You know, if it's still pretty well lit. You know, as you can see those hands, I don't know if the camera picks it up, but those hands already kind of have a greenish hue to them. So I think it's really nice to have it executed the way it is. And, you know, I have plenty of Seikos with killer lume, so I don't really need to have, you know, I don't need to have that box checked when it comes to this particular piece. So, because, you know, Seiko has me covered in, you know, my divers. So that was one thing I thought I would mention. Let's go ahead and just get a quick shot of the case back here. So as you can see, very nice. You know, very clean, nothing crazy. There's no perlage or anything, but, you know, that's not really how Seiko rolls. But definitely really high quality, very clean. Nice little rotor there for 35B, 23 joules, Japan. Very nicely executed. Let me try to get it as close as I can there. Really just clean and just professionally finished. I mean, that's just a professional watch. The etching there on that case back. And of course the display window, which I'm sure is just a Hardlex mineral. So let's get this wrapped back through here and then fed through the keeper there. Okay. Now, I don't know if you saw that etched on there, but this is 10 bar or 100 meters water resistance, which is really nice. Although it's not a screw down crown, basically the seals that are in the watch, if you were to put it in the water, you know, there shouldn't, the pressure should just hold on its own without, you know, much effort. So, I mean, would I take this diving? No. You know, obviously definitely not 100 meters deep. But, you know, I definitely would not be afraid if it was raining and I was wearing this watch or, you know, spilled a drink on it or something like that. I think it would be just fine, you know, besides being a little bit dirty. I think the 100 meters water resistant is really refreshing to have in a piece that doesn't need really water resistance, but it still has it. And, you know, if Seiko says it's that water resistant, chances are it's probably 10 to 15% even more water resistant, and they just, you know, kind of downplayed the numbers a bit. Now, the lugs are a 20 millimeter lug spacing, so I think that's really nice, and it adds to that very classic silhouette where, you know, it comes out and then we have the lugs versus, you know, some most I'd say Seiko watches really, they have a very particular shape to them, where there's not as much of the definition. You know, it'll more flow together, and that's kind of you know, you'll see a lot of the Grand Seikos and, you know, some of the Sarg line where it really just has more of a flowing case. And what I really like here is the break between, which you just don't see in Seikos too much. That break with the lugs, it just has, you know, its own shape and character and a couple more kind of details that you can really look at and appreciate. Even though, you know, the finishing is really quite simple there. It's just, you know, being a high polish. And then, of course, back to the factory strap, it is a 20 millimeter lug width, of course, and then it just tapers down to a nice 18 millimeter buckle there. So really nice, and I gotta say, really impressed by this. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point I either put it back on or, you know, maybe reuse this buckle for a different strap, or maybe even put this strap on a different watch. So definitely keep an eye out for that. Now, on the wrist, let's go ahead and get this on there. And I'll give you guys a little look here, a little sneak peek, before I do the full review for these Haveston straps. They're actually much shorter than your average NATO, and it's because it's kind of been redesigned. The way that where they want the buckle to sit and kind of the keepers to align has been really well thought out. So as you can see, it comes through here. Really nice, that is a full-sized buckle there. Nothing, skipped or no corners cut. But basically now it just wears much nicer than your average NATO just because of the way that where everything is. I think it's just been thought out, and it just makes more of if I was to take my wrist out of this, it would actually be more in the shape of a wrist versus kind of some of the other offerings that are out there, which I feel really, I should just say even just traditional NATOs in general, and kind of where their placement for the buckle and the keepers go, I think is more aesthetics for, it's not on, or, kind of where the keepers will line up here. But I think really they place by shortening the strap. And one of the nice things is this is actually a floating keeper. So if you wanted to, you could scoot it back here and tuck it under. But I think, I have a kind of a larger wrist at 7 1/4. So I think it looks quite good the way it is there. Now, as you can see on wrist, it wears really well. It has that very clean militaristic aesthetic, almost a cross between a field watch and a pilot's watch, because of kind of the color palette and just the extreme legibility. It just really, really nice and just flows. Now, I mean, it really achieves a look that a lot of fashion watches are even trying to achieve right now. So that's also pretty cool. So even, non-watch aficionados can see a piece like this, and it's actually quite a stylish piece, I mean, to me, I think. And it's something that can be appreciated from the connoisseur to just, the casual kind of onlooker. So that's definitely a nice touch. Now, it's really, I think it's just something, it hits a sweet spot for me. And I think it's just one of those ones where, Seiko, a lot of the times what they do is they create these watches and they almost put these quirks in there, and and I feel like a lot of the times they're misconstrued as flaws. And because I think Seiko's not interested in selling you your one watch. It doesn't want to sell you the one perfect watch. It wants to sell you 10 watches, and it wants you to have a little bit of what you love here, a little bit of what you love there. And I think this piece is one of the few watches that Seiko makes that actually does have a lot of that broad appeal where it could kind of be the one watch. So I think that's just really surprising. And, of course, Seiko did its magic, and it made little design choices like not looming, the numerals, and not using a signed crown, or not offering a bracelet option on here. I think which, will kind of stop it for many people from being, the perfect watch. But I think this can easily be an everyday watch, which is really cool. Now, as far as model variants go, there's the 03, which is a cream dial with a brown strap, and then there's the 05. And when I say 05, SRPB 05, which is a sunburst green dial and a brown strap. So those both look really cool. But for me, the black was just really, the most versatile option. And I think honestly, when I was shopping for this piece, I actually had this particular strap in mind, and I'm just glad that it paid off, because I think they really definitely go so well together. So that was one of the reasons why I chose the black. And of course, it definitely keeps more in tone with the classic pilot's watch. Now, as far as comparable models, there's a ton of pilot's watches out there. Most of them are, at least a millimeter larger, coming in at 42, 43, 44, 45, 47, 48. I mean, the classic Fliegers were 52, millimeter watches and up. So you know, pilot's watches are generally classically very large, from the dial to the case to everything like that. So the thing that I like about this piece is that although it is larger, and it definitely still has that large legible dial, I think it just wears nice enough to where it's a little bit more contemporary and more versatile to where you can wear this, you know, in a number of situations. So really, you know, at this price point, you know, it's going to be really hard to find more watches like this that really are so fully loaded. And then now you add in-house to that, it's even harder to find something that's in-house. So I do plan on doing kind of a, I did a video a while back, which was, you know, different pilots watches, you know, in different ranges as far as price ranges go. I do want to follow up and do another kind of a part 2 to that and kind of cover just this genre of a couple of new pilots watches that I have, that I've done individual reviews on, or you know, will do, and just kind of get them all together in one video and do kind of a group comparison and kind of talk about some of the niches and markets that each kind of cover. So definitely keep an eye out for that if you like this piece. Now, I mean, really the bottom line is, you know, it's a high value, you know, a lesser known JDM piece, and it's super versatile and, you know, really just to me perfectly executed. There are choices they made which, you know, maybe not be ideal, but you know, you can't really fault them. That's just, what would you expect from Seiko? You know, they won't make that perfect watch, you know, but I think in this case they made one that was, you know, pretty close to perfectly balanced. You know, the dial weight, you know, visually the legibility, I mean, just everything on here, really big fan of. And although this isn't crazy for a lume, let's go ahead and get a lume shot. Now, I didn't charge this with the black light, but you know, just from the studio lights, I think gives you a pretty good idea. It's really just the lume pips, and then the hands there. You see the second hand sweeping away. You know, it is Lumibright, which means it's going to hold a charge for, you know, quite some time, and it's going to pretty easily take a charge. But again, you know, this is no lume beast. But definitely let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I've already, you know, it's funny thing about this watch is I've posted it in a couple different places, and it feels like SARG owners, which, you know, the SARG 009 or the SARG 011 owners feel the need to chime in and you know, kind of state how that watch is better than this one. You know, I do like that watch. You know, obviously not enough for me to pull a trigger. I felt like there was a couple design quirks you know, I still haven't been able to get over, but now that those are being discontinued, you know, maybe I will pull the trigger and get one on the channel. But it's just kind of funny that, you know, it seems like wherever I've posted it, somebody's, you know, has to post like a weird comment about, you know, I really do prefer the 09, you know, the SARG over this, or hey, oh, this one's a better value and this and that. And it's just like, all right, this is not a, you know, a replacement for that watch. This was released before the other one was discontinued. It's in a different line altogether. So it's just kind of funny. I don't know why, you know, I don't know if people think that Seiko's reading the comments and they're like, oh, well, we want the SARG 009 back. You know, we don't want this one. The specs aren't as good. You know, it's still hacking and hand windable. Yeah, it's not a, you know, 6-arm movement. It's a 4-arm movement. But, you know, it's just a little less on the power reserve, and the hairspring is, you know, a little bit more simple. But at the end of the day, it's really similar performance and very similar architecture. So really, I feel the differences in those movements are really more for marketing's sake. I mean, if you've seen any of my mods, you know, I haven't gotten any 15 put in any of them, which is the 4R15 equivalent. You know, I have never had one put in. I normally just go with the NH, which is just a 4R. equivalent. So anyways, this one ran a little bit long because I do love this watch. I like looking at it even from the little screen on my camera while I record this. So if you liked looking at this watch and and you survived my commentary, please do hit like. And more so, if you'd like to hear more, see more, be a part of the channel. We recently hit 5,000 subscribers, so that's awesome. Definitely do hit subscribe as well. So thanks guys, and have a good one. Bye.